Here we go. We're recording. Fabulous. And I will just start this meeting. So good evening, everybody. It's very nice to see you all. Thank you for taking the time to jump on tonight. As you know, we've dropped this meeting in because it's been a very strange few months for everybody. I think the last time I saw quite a few of you was during some of the community conversation events that were happening sort of early May. At that point, we were talking about the planned consultation that was coming our way in the summertime. We were obviously very excited about that concept and was sort of lots of planning around that. And then for some of you that I was with actually during the community conversations, there was an election called. So that put a stop to the summer consultations. And it also put a stop to any of our LRG meetings because clearly we are not able to meet during the pre-election time. So it has been quite a strange time for everybody. Given that we've had this sort of breather or break in normal proceedings, we felt that it would be a good opportunity to bring as many of you together as we can to introduce you to David, our new CEO, who was also announced on the same day as an election was called. I don't know if that was planned, but it was unusual timing. So as I say, a lot has been happening in the last few months. So I thought it would be really good to bring everybody together and just really give you a chance to meet with David. Now, I have to caveat that I'm sure you have lots and lots of questions. Very detailed technical questions, and I know that you're all still looking for some answers to those questions. We are still in that period where we aren't really able to give you any clarity on that at the moment. We're still having conversations with the DfT. We're still waiting for the new government to really form and have those conversations with the government as well. So I apologise in advance if you are disappointed by any of the questions that you might not get clarity tonight, but please be assured that as soon as we can come back to you, and as soon as we do have more information. Oh, whoever that was talking, can you pop yourself on mute, please? Thanks. So yes, so again, as soon as we can, we will absolutely come back with more information. But this is a good opportunity for David to introduce himself. And anyway, I will stop talking because it's not about me tonight. It's about meeting David. Just a bit of housekeeping because this is a bit of an unusual meeting for us. I'm going to introduce David next, and he's obviously going to give a bit of an intro to him. Then what we would like to do is we'd like to open the floor for some Q&A. We'll attempt to get through as much of that as we can in this short time. What I suggest is that you raise your hand. There's a raise hand function. Hope everybody can see that on the top there. It normally puts people in order of when they raise their hands, so we can then introduce you and then you can ask your question to David. I would suggest that you probably try not to put questions in the chat box this time. I know normally we do that. I think just in this evening, it's best to raise your hand. And if you don't get a chance this evening to ask David a question, then you can use the LRG email address or the contact address and we can get back to you. So without further ado, I'm going to hand you over to David Hughes.
Hey, thank you, Sarah. Good evening, everyone. Great to have this opportunity to say hello, introduce myself. As Sarah said, that's really, I guess, from our perspective, the main purpose tonight is it's just for me to introduce myself to the group. As Sarah's already alluded to, I've been in post 6 weeks now, and the bulk of that time coincided with the general election campaign. So by necessity, I wasn't able to do much external work, external engagement, which in some ways was quite helpful for me on a personal level because it gave me a little bit of a period of time to really focus internally within the project and within East West Rail, the company, to try and get up to speed with where we're at. So that was quite useful from a personal perspective. But now the election's out of the way, the handcuffs are off, if you like. So this is the first of, I guess, when I look at my diary over the coming weeks, there's really ramping up the amount of external meetings I'm going to be having with folks across the whole line of route, and I'm really looking forward to that. And I know a number of you have already been in touch with my office, and there are meetings scheduled, etc. So this is very much just a sort of preliminary hello, so you can put a face to the name. Although I have spent 6 weeks now, sort of getting up to speed, I wouldn't claim to be abreast of all of the technical details. So I think Sarah's sort of caveat, her health warning, please don't put me on the spot with any sort of questions of technical detail or details around design or etc., because I'm still, I wouldn't be confident in trying to handle that sort of a conversation. But I'm more than happy to engage in a more general sort of discussion about where I think we are, and where we might be heading under a new government. Although to an extent, your guess is as good as mine. Yeah, it's great to be here, and I, really looking forward to working constructively with groups such as this one. I think it's always an opportunity, isn't it, when there's a change in the leadership of an organisation like East West Rail. It's an opportunity to reset relationships, and I'm very keen to do that and to engage, I hope, in a very open and constructive way, recognizing we're not always going to agree, recognizing that sometimes, perhaps quite often, I'm going to be the bearer of bad tidings. I'm not always going to be able to give everybody the answer they want, but I hope we're able to have a very open conversation and a very kind of constructive conversation, even if we're not necessarily coming to the issues on the same page, and even if we're not necessarily going to end up in complete agreement. I value in these roles being able to hear the views from folk along the line of route, whether or not they're views that are kind of supportive of the project. So that's really kind of how I intend entering into these sort of relationships, and I hope we can form that sort of relationship. Just a little, just briefly, if you will indulge me, I promise not to bang on too much, but just a little bit about who I am, might be of some interest. So I've got 20 odd years, probably a bit more now, experience in working on big rail projects, mainly in London. Bulk of my career has been with Transport for London, in particular with London Underground, working on some of the big rail projects in London over the last couple of decades. I suppose the most notable one would be Crossrail, obviously now in service as the Elizabeth Line. I worked on that pretty much in one guise or another. I was involved in Crossrail pretty much from the get-go of that project, at least in its modern incarnation. Some would argue it sort of dates back to Brunel, but I think most people would date the modern history of Crossrail in starting about 2007. So I was involved in Crossrail from 2007 right through until its opening in the early part of this decade. And I've also worked on some of the big London Underground projects like the Northern Line extension, tube upgrades, etc. So that's really my background, big rail projects. I did a brief stint with Transport for the North up in Manchester, a brief and very heavily COVID impacted stint with Transport for the North in 2020 before joining the Department for Transport. So I'm not a career civil servant. My background is, as I say, big rail projects, but I spent best part of 3 years under the previous government as Director General for Rail Infrastructure. Very fancy title. But in effect, I was responsible for managing the government's portfolio of big rail projects, which included East West Rail. So I'm not coming to this project completely new. The East West Rail, the company, in effect, was accountable to me in my previous role as Director General. So, I did have a kind of helicopter view of the project in my previous role as Director General. It was one of many, many projects that I was accountable for. So I was never in the detail of it. And I always, at this part of the conversation, feel the need to just enter a kind of clarification that I wasn't responsible for HS2. HS2 was never anything to do with me, so I take no responsibility for HS2. But all of the other big rail enhancements came under me when I was Director General Rail Infrastructure. I did a brief stint with ARA at the back end of last year. Why was it brief? Well, simply because I got invited to put my hat in the ring for the role of Chief Exec on this project, and to be honest, this is my dream job. I know there'll be different views on the call about the merits and otherwise of this project. I personally am a very passionate believer in the case for East West Rail, and the opportunity for me, given my background, to lead what is a nationally significant infrastructure project was one that, you know, I just was too good to refuse. So once the opportunity, as I say, once the opportunity came up to put my hat in the ring for the role of Chief Exec, I didn't hesitate, and I was absolutely thrilled when in May I was informed by the outgoing Secretary of State for Transport that my application had been successful. As Sarah alluded to, Rishi Sunak somewhat stole my news cycle. Not that I think it would have gathered much coverage, but my appointment was announced on the same day of the election, and as I say, being focused, I started it, you know, took up the position at the beginning of June, and as I say, that's mainly been focused internally because of the fact that we had the general election campaign ongoing. But that's done now, of course. I'm sure you'll have noticed the election's over. I'm sure everyone spotted that. We have a new government. I suspect you're itching to kind of get a sense of what's the early kind of steers and mood music that we've got from the new government. I hate to disappoint, but we haven't had any yet. And I wouldn't expect to, actually. You know, we're only a week or so in. And, you know, I think we would expect new ministers to take a little bit of time to get up to speed with what being a minister entails, and they will be getting mountains of briefing. That said, some of you will have spotted that the new rail minister isn't some novice minister. It is Lord Peter Hendy, who was previously the chair of Network Rail, and I think widely regarded as one of the most respected transport professionals of the era. I actually happen to know Peter very well. It was Peter who recruited me into Transport for London many years ago, and I was Peter's chief of staff, and another fancy title which basically translates as bag carrier. I was Peter's bag carrier for a number of years. So actually, I think we're very, you know, I think for the rail sector, and I include East West Rail within that, I think it's great news that Lord Hendy has been appointed to that post as rail minister. So although we haven't had any formal engagement, I've exchanged a few texts with him, but we haven't had any formal engagement with the new rail minister as yet. I anticipate we will do so in the not too distant future. And knowing Peter as I do, I think he'll probably have very clear views about the project and how he wants it taken forward. I think that's probably, Sarah, enough of me rabbiting on. So I'm very happy to open it up for questions. Again, with the caveat that if you ask me a detailed question, I'm afraid I'm probably going to just say pass. But fire away, and I hope we can have a very open and constructive discussion. Thanks, Sarah.
Great. Thanks, David. I saw Justin's hand go up. Justin, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself and who you're representing, so David could get a feel for that. Thank you.
That's fine. David, hi. I'm Justin Griffiths. I am chair of Roxton Parish Council. Roxton Parish Council, you may or may not know, was one of the founding parish councils of the Be Fair Group.
Right.
First of all, welcome.
Thank you.
Congratulations on the new job.
Thank you.
Your two previous CEOs had a very informative trip along the route in North Bedfordshire, and we would like to extend that invite out to you. I expect your PA or someone will be in touch to try and get a date. We can facilitate that, and I do hope and do encourage you to take part in that.
Yeah, I would gladly. I mean, it's on my. I've been out and seen a bit of the route. I did do a sort of all of the route in a day tour a few years ago. But I need to sort of do it again and in more detail, and I'd be very happy to take up that kind offer, Justin. So yeah, thank you, and thank you for your words of welcome. They're very much appreciated.
Okay.
Thanks, Justin. Next is Nicola Gribble.
Hello, good evening. Hello, David. Thank you very much
Hi,
for
Nicola.
coming and giving us your time. My name's Nicola Gribble. I'm chair of Reynolds Parish Council, and I'm also elected ward councillor for Reynolds and Ravenston. I'm a scientist by background, retired last year, so I've been doing my ward counselling work for about a year. 4 dogs, a pony, handful of chickens, and a cat. Okay.
Nice.
And
I have one
also,
dog. One dog's
yeah.
more than enough.
Yeah, well, I've got 4. So I'm also a member of the East West Mainline Partnership Board.
Right.
So I'm sure our paths will undoubtedly cross. I'm sure you're aware there is significant local opposition, certainly to construction stage 3.
Yeah.
And you probably know that there was a petition that was signed by 5,475 people and had to be stopped because of the general election. The petition read, "We do not want the Oxford-Cambridge rail link as described in the East West Rail Company's route update announcement and subsequent refinements. We call for these plans to be paused and for a full, transparent and independent review." Will you be giving us a full, transparent and independent review of the current plans? Thank you.
Nicola, I'm not going to commit to that. I wasn't aware of the petition, but obviously I am aware that there are, that there is opposition to the proposed route that was briefed out by the company last year. I think it was, wasn't it, in the route update announcement? Was that last year, Sarah? I'm trying to. Yeah, you're nodding. So yeah, I mean, I am. So look, Nicola, I am aware that there is opposition, particularly in certain locations. I wasn't aware of the specific of the call of the petition.
Yeah, so the petition unfortunately was halted because of the election, but it was endorsed by certainly our local MPs as well. I'll send you it if you like. Send you the link.
Who are you petitioning?
This was actually petitioning the government, so Department of Transport, to actually look. Do you know what? Things have changed.
Yeah.
It's not as it seems.
Yeah.
And given that we're using a lot of taxpayers' money, we're disrupting people, we're making people homeless. Do you know what? Let's just pause here. There are alternatives, and let's have a transparent review with all of the experts, including our local guys.
And you're obviously completely at liberty to continue with that petitioning of government, and who knows, they may, I don't know, they may want to review the project in its entirety. I genuinely don't know. As you'll be aware, the intent of the company prior to the calling of the election had been to progress to a statutory consultation in, I think it was sort of June, July. So I can't remember the exact dates we were aiming at, but round about now, that obviously had to be pulled once the election was called. And what we're waiting on, we haven't yet started the discussion with new ministers about how they want to progress now, in terms of a timetable for consultation. I have to, as chief executive of the company, I have to progress the scheme for the time being until instructed otherwise by government, on the basis of the sort of previous set of instructions, which given the impact of the election is now to try and work out, well, what would be a sensible programme going forward starting from where we now are, for consultation en route to an eventual DCO submission. So that's really what we're trying to figure out. We're trying to outline for new ministers what the options would be around that. We're not going to be, look, and I've said, in my opening comments, what I want to try and be is open and transparent. I mean, right now, it's not on the, it's not something that I'm going to be pushing for a full and independent review, but it might be that something that government asked me to do. But for the time being, what I'm doing is setting out options for new ministers on how we might progress the scheme from where we are. But I've not had any feedback on that yet, and I wouldn't expect it for a while.
Okay, no, thank you very much. At least you're aware of it now. And as I say, if you need any information, please do come.
Thanks, Nicola.
Cheers.
Thanks,
Talk
Nicola.
later. Bye-bye.
Thanks, David. The next person is David. I can't see a surname, but your hand's up.
David Revel. Yeah, David Revel from Haslingfield Parish Council. Welcome to the project.
Thank you.
Couple of things. The environmental issues. I'm just wondering your general approach to environmental issues and how seriously you take them.
So it looks to me as though the company has, to date, engaged very seriously in and rightly in how it mitigates the environmental impact of the scheme. It has, I think, developed quite a compelling environment strategy. It's made commitments around biodiversity net gain. I think so. I'm not across all the detail of all elements of that environmental strategy. What I do know is that for nationally significant infrastructure projects of this kind, that it's not an optional extra to kind of be right on top of that agenda. The project is not going to get the support of government. It will not get through planning unless it has a very, very compelling case around how it is mitigating its environmental impacts. We need to commit to the carbon principles that the infrastructure client group have developed. And unless that kind of thinking needs to be, and I've already had this discussion with my team, it's not a kind of nice to have or an over extra or the icing on the cake. It's the cake. And I think we, in these big construction projects, and this is where the world has moved on quite a bit actually from Crossrail. Crossrail, the detailed planning was in the late 2007, 2008, 2009. I think the world's moved on massively now in terms of what is regarded as just basic good practice around environmental mitigations, sustainable construction, biodiversity net gain. The world shifted a lot, and that absolutely has to be front and center of our thinking. And it's been interesting getting my head around some of that over the last few weeks. And what becomes clear to me is that you can have a tendency to think of that as just a kind of extra cost, but actually I think what we're increasingly finding on schemes like the Lower Thames Crossing is that if you embed this thinking in your planning, it can actually help reduce costs. So I mean, that's a bit of a long-winded answer to say it's got to be at the forefront of what we're doing.
Can I just mention a supplementary to that?
Sure.
That is, when you get into the detail, if you could take a look at the carbon impact of construction, as opposed to just the operational case.
Yeah.
There might be a broad balance operationally in terms of modal shift and whatever, but the embedded cost of the construction is massive.
Yeah, no, and that's part of it.
I know you're not in the detail yet.
No, but that's I think that's kind of what I'm sort of alluding to when I say, because I don't think embedded carbon was even a concept. I didn't even when we were in the early stages of Crossrail. I can't recall that ever being a thing. And now it's front and center of our planning and is a key part of the business case analysis. And that's an example, I think, of how much the world has moved on in the sort of 15 years since Crossrail was at an equivalent stage. And I think, and I know this from my time in the department as Director General, the assessing environmental impact just through kind of at the tailpipe emission point. I mean, that's like history now. We're sort of, I think we're way beyond that, much more sophisticated and rightly so. So, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. Thanks, Dave.
Thank you.
Yep, thanks, David. That's good. I think we've probably got time for 2 more questions. We've got 2 more hands up, so let's see if we can get through. Stephen, Drew, you're up next.
Thank you. I'm a district councillor in Camborne, so obviously along the route, David. I just wanted to say very clearly that people in Camborne are very, very keen on East West Rail and very, very keen to see it being built. We are obviously a new town celebrating our 25th anniversary this year. We already have a population of around 14,000, which is growing very rapidly and will continue to grow in years to come. The building of East West Rail and the building of a station near to Camborne is very close to the heart and very, very good from the perspective of residents in Camborne. In our conversations as councillors, it's something that comes up on a very regular basis, and Camborne's residents are very, very keen to see East West Rail get built as soon as possible, and very, very keen to see the station arrive near to Camborne as soon as possibly can be the case. So I just wanted to make you aware of that fact from the perspective of a town which will be along the route of the railway.
Thank you, Stephen. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Thanks, Stephen. And Peter Norris.
Good evening, David.
Hi, Peter.
And welcome to your new post. Good to see you. My name is Peter Norris. I live in Wrenhold. I provide technical guidance to Wrenhold Parish Council and also as a member of the Be Fair group.
Right.
My question is on the structure of the statutory consultation. It came to some as a surprise that East West Rail had decided to have a 2-stage statutory consultation, which is not a lot of precedent for doing things this way. Normally, the project would be fully scoped before going for the final statutory consultation. But we presume that this was done either because of the imminence of a general election and a governmental change, maybe to get the first stage out of the way before that happened, or the alternative is that a more jaundiced view would be that East West Rail weren't actually ready to mount a full statutory consultation, and so it's been done in 2 parts. Do you have any view on whether this should continue as a 2-part statutory consultation, or with the change of government, would it be sensible to, and also various other major implications coming in, like Universal, which will affect the demands that are placed on East West Rail, whether it would be pertinent to pause things, to relook at things, and then mount a single-stage statutory consultation, which will be better informed than the way things are shaping up.
Thanks, Peter. And look, I'm not across all of the history of how we got to where we were. I suspect there's elements of what you say that's accurate, but I think there's another argument that would say a 2-stage consultation would give more opportunity to engage with residents along the line of route and seek views. It's kind of like 2 bites of the cherry, but I also agree it's not necessarily the normal approach. These are the options that we want to explore with new ministers, and I think there'll be pros and cons around different approaches. Do we stick, now that we have a new government, do we stick with a 2-stage consultation approach, or do we go for one? And if in either case, what's the sort of timing associated with those? How much work do we need? You're right, there's different, depending on the approach that we take, there's a different level of pre-work that's required to be done by East West Rail, and so there you're absolutely on the money. That they're the sort of issues that we need to tease out with Lord Hendy. I suspect will be the kind of the person who's going to make the call on this. And I know my team have been working with officials in the department to try and set out those options. And as I say, we haven't had that engagement with new ministers, with Lord Peter yet. I hope we will do shortly, but I mean, I think your observations are very valid ones.
Thank you very much. That aside, do you have an opinion to offer as to when the first statutory consultation event may actually start off?
I haven't, and I'd just be what I'd hate to do in my very first interaction with you is give you a date and then and then not hit that date. And so I'm gonna duck that one, if I may, Peter. And partly because I just genuinely don't know. So, but what I wouldn't want to do is sort of, if I were to float a date, it would be no more than a guess, and I don't think that would be very helpful. So.
Okay, thank you for that. Just one final question. You stressed the nature of this project as being of national strategic importance. One would think for a strategic rail line being funded, designed, and built, it would have a reasonable capacity to handle freight. Yet you may not know this, but all the way through, freight has been downplayed by East West Rail, by successive CEOs, and it's been designed along a route which in fact will restrain its freight capability because of the gradients involved. I just make that point. I won't tax you with it, but it is a big loose end on this project.
Okay, thank you. Noted. I am aware of some of the previous discussions around this from my previous role as Director General, and yeah, I understand some of the trade-offs involved, but I'm not. Thank you for recognising that I wouldn't be close enough to the detail on this at the moment, but I note your comments. Thank you. Thanks, Peter.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Peter. That takes us 3 minutes over 7, and I'm sure there's more questions that people would like to ask, but I do have to be quite strict with timings here. So I just wanted to again thank you all for taking the time to join us this evening. This will be the start of a plan of engagement coming up over the next few sort of weeks, months, years. I'm hoping to come back to you quite soon with news around when the next LRG meetings will be as well. But as ever, you can contact me directly by my email or by my mobile number. If you have any direct questions for David, it's probably best to go through the contact address and we can make sure that they're picked up. And again, really just thank you all for joining, and thank you to David for taking the time out this evening. And I look forward to seeing you all or speaking to you all in the near future. Enjoy the rest of your summer. Let's hope it actually starts soon. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Bye, Sarah.
Thank you.
Thanks
Thank you very
all.
much.
Bye.
Leave.